Dr. Lorrin Pang is an anomaly. He's a public official. He is the state health officer for Maui County. And most people that are in these positions, they do what their boss says. They just keep in the box and go along. Not Dr. Pang. He takes his job, he takes his mission seriously. And his mission is public health. And he will do that outside of the box even. They've done 4 court cases and they've won all of them. We are very, very fortunate to have him here. He's respected worldwide, and he's speaking as a private citizen because this is not sanctioned by the department, but we're very fortunate to have a health officer who will speak outside the box. Dr. Lorrin Pang.
How do I turn this on? Thank you. I've always asked to debate. I'll debate whoever wants to debate with us on the TV or not on the TV. I've given this talk almost on a yearly basis for the last 6 years with a college. And usually from GMO-free Hawaii, there were 3 advisors and then there's a member. There's one advisor for legal things, Paul Atichoff. He'll win all the suits. Then there is a ecologist, agriculture expert, Emeritus Professor Hector Valenzuela from the UH. He's fought with them. They've threatened to cut off his funds, and he always protests, and he's very prominent. And then I will represent the health issues. So we have health, environmental, and ag, and legal. All of us kind of agree here. But as we go out to try to move the bill forward, you can imagine a room this size where maybe half the people don't know the issue, the other quarter really hate you, and a third are going to tell you, you're affecting my job. Then you have to kind of look in yourself, have the gumption to say what you believe is true, and hopefully I'll convince you some things that are true. I keep adding things that the industry, Monsanto Syngenta, Pioneer, they keep bringing up, and so you have to be able to think about them and respond. Let's get really basic here. The issue came about initially when we tried to move legislation because we're trying to protect taro or kalo. Kalo is our native plant. It's almost synonymous with the Hawaiian culture. And to modify or mess around with Hawaiians' kalo or taro is absolute no-no. But we blocked the genetic modification of kalo. The state would not hear of this, so we went county to county. Big Island blocked it, and it was unanimous. The mayor overrode the veto. Then they overrode the mayor's veto. And at the very last minute, the coffee farmers said, yeah, we want GMO-free coffee too. So they kind of got on that. Within 9 months, we were here blocking GMO kalo in the field, in the market, and in the lab. You block them all. So on Maui, we won. In the middle of my testimony, I told our county council, this might be the last time we talk about this. There's always an attempt to preempt the genetic modification control. There always is an attempt. So people are watching this, and all that we do, lo and behold, one day they might say, it's illegal. You preempted. The other issue they might bring up one day, we're always afraid, is stop talking about this. This is a national security issue. No, wait. After 9/11, we had these talks for Homeland Security. And these guys came in from Texas, and they talked about food security. And this guy from Texas kind of looked like Dick Cheney. He said, GMOs are the most dangerous thing of all. And I thought, hey, that's useful if I quote him. So after the conference, I went up kind of innocently, and I said, can I quote you? He goes, yeah, sure. GMOs are very dangerous. When you get wiped out, you get wiped out. Now, I thought that was understood, but to hear him say that. So I said, so you'll speak against them here on the islands? He said, you don't understand. I said, what don't I understand? We want the enemy to have it, Iran and China, so you never have to invade them. You just say, I'll turn off your seed, or your seed might time bomb in 3 years. We want them to have it, but not us. And so I said, well, then why do we have it? I mean, we have it because we're sending them the seed. He said, well, you kind of got to show that we have to have it so that they can think it's good for them to have it. It's like, whoa, I have like no idea. And that's when I decided, forget the politics, just do the science as I was raised. The industry, they always say, Dr. Pang, you're a human health guy. Don't talk about plants. Plants are plants, and humans are humans. In the humans, we have done GMOs long before the plant guys did it. And we called it gene therapy. Here's the problem. when you grow these plants and eat these plants, when there's a mistake, and there's been quite a few mistakes with different products, we recall it. Contained, labeled, marketed, used as indicated. Here we have the GM field products growing willy-nilly. It is in the wind, it is in the soil, it is next to our elementary school kids, it's in the wastewater, it's in the workers, it's in the community. And these guys called me and they said, can you help us? We're breathing the dust. And I said, oh, that's bad. Isn't there any protection? They said, no. All the wives are trying to make these handkerchiefs. And they said, but the bag says not for human consumption, but they're breathing the dust. And I said, wow, I'll check this out. So I called State Department of Labor. Said, hey, the guys are breathing uncontrolled the dust, and the bag says not for human consumption. So the guy says, well, they're not eating it, are they? Oh. And wait, this gets even stranger. I said, wait, they're breathing it. That's a heavy-duty exposure. He says, are you a doctor? I said, yes. He said, I'll call you back. And he never did. And I called him again, and he never called me back again. So I'm used to getting stonewalled, but this kind of stuff, I mean, that has got to stop. Incidentally, those guys are not dumb. And they actually said, we know we can never prove this, but for the rest of us breathing the dust, can you help us? So the Department of Labor tried to take a stand on this stuff. Now, it's in the field, and then, lo and behold, these guys tried to grow food that makes pharmaceuticals. So you grow the corn not for pharmaceuticals, but to harvest insulin, harvest spermicides. You can make the corn or the plant do anything. Almost like we use the term plant for a factory. A plant is a plant that can make products. And then we eat the stuff. Now, do you not think GMOs are dangerous? Industry will say harm has never been shown. Well, there was one product. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever read. And it goes by the acronym TGN 1412. And this was a GM product, tested in humans first before it went to market. And it was some immunomodulator, like the one they tried to bring into Kona, which we blocked. And they give it to 10 guys. First they gave it to dogs. The dogs did real well. And they gave 1/50th the dose to 10 people in the UK. That made front page headlines in Star Bulletin and Maui News. I have never seen a study of 10 people make front page done in the UK appear in Star Bulletin because it was the most bizarre medical things we have ever seen. That was strange. I don't know if they got the mutation or just the product or the product and the mutation. Who knows? But they quickly, Tejero is the name of the company, shut that down and don't talk about it. And there was an inquiry worldwide, thank goodness for New Zealand. The Prime Minister of New Zealand said, was that a GMO product? And they refused to answer, stonewall. And they found out it was. So she says, it was a GMO product. Thank God for once you did the normal testing and we didn't release it in fields like they tried to do in Kona, which we blocked. An immunomodulator was coming down in Kona in the algae. Then, what did the company say? Oh, you know all that weird stuff? Must have been a contaminant. That's gray area, isn't it? All those unintended spots. What are you going to do? Call that contaminant? So the German government said, contaminant or not, it was made to the correct recipe. And if it was a contaminant, it's inevitable in your product. So that company quickly shut down, never to be heard from again. There's other companies that were messing and they were shut down. Do not rain on our parade. Let us go with the food. So that was a little bit scary. What do we propose? I learned the precautionary principle. Before, you can take any product you want, and we're about to give it to humans or put it in the environment. Before you do that, you have to generate data, not opinion, to show the benefit to risk of each of your products. So we do it for aspirin, we do it for flu vaccine, we do it for each product. You don't trust the company. You don't say, Merck, Sharp, and Dohme, you guys do a good job, cut loose, do whatever you want. You surely don't do it for Monsanto. It's for each product. And how do we show the data? In the field of science, there are 4 areas which I've learned are so complicated, we only evaluate them empirically. We observe. We don't try to guess what's going to happen. One is the brain, because the brain is very complicated. The next area complicated is the gene, the genome, and we learn this every day. The next area is environment. Even a mulch pile, that's complicated. You mess with one thing, you have no idea what you're causing. So when we get data, does that mean we can't study it? Of course not. That means we do stuff to it. That's a guy looking in binoculars, and he's looking to see what he sees. Generally, there's two groups, the treatment group and the control group, and that's called empirical data. He just observes because he doesn't have the arrogance to say, this is going to happen. So we observe, and we have learned to respect things that we don't understand. Then, once we generate the risk and benefit, we compare the ratios amongst the alternatives. You want this or you want that? And then we usually compare it, we make sure we have the standard treatment, and if the benefits outweigh the risk, we go forward. We market on a provisional basis. If we do the trials, we test them in animals, we test them in humans, phase 1, 2, 3, all the way to humans. Then we go marketing, and we label it, and we monitor post-market. And 50% of our drugs and vaccines, severe side effects are seen post-marketing. We either pull them back or we relabel them not to be used with these conditions. So post-marketing is very, very important. This is risk assessment. Monsanto brought in the professor from Kansas. He says, we do risk assessment. What the heck is that? Wikipedia, I'm asking people risk assessment. And risk assessment has this kind of wheel going around. Step 1 is to identify the hazards. Well, what hazard? When you blast it away in a gene, I don't know what you made. Someone here, someone there. And it's been proven. There are many unintentional expressions of genes and proteins. Well, did you mean to mean that? I don't know. Yeah, there's plenty of extra stuff. Is it hazardous? I don't know. So you're supposed to identify the hazard. I can't do that. Once you identify the hazard, you're supposed to say, are there known rules to contain this hazard, if you could identify it? And I can tell you one thing. When you have a hazard or a product you don't know, and you go to use it, then you identify the dose and the mechanism. They will guess the dose response. That's the next step. Then they will describe how you avoid it. Stay upwind. Put the mask on. Don't put the mask on. Wash your clothes once a day. And then you're supposed to reassess and go back in the loop and say, you know what? 5 of those things were not hazardous, but 10 more are. The reassess, it feeds back in. In this loop, what are they missing? Since they made the loop, since the guy was here, we have seen all the animal data. The animal data is stupendous. Not uniform because the product's inconsistent. But don't you think you should feed it back in the loop to tell us there's hazards? Don't you think you should say, you know, there seems to be unknown hazards. It's not A, B, or C, but the animals are still acting weird. And that is called the empirical. We gave a bunch of stuff. I cleaned up as best I could the products, and they're still having problems. So it feeds back. Right now, the GMO guys are moving through here. They refuse to accept the animal data because animals are animals, humans are humans. That's a fair statement, but it's very indicative that trouble is coming down the line. The next thing they will tell you is that we've eaten maybe 100 million GMO meals. We've seen nothing. First of all, that statement, we've seen nothing, doesn't mean you looked. Case in point is cigarettes. We did not show cigarettes cause cancer until the mid-50s. We were smoking since 1890. How many billions of cigarettes were smoked? And we didn't see nothing till 1950. Oh, but now we're all tuned in. I know to look for smoke. Really? How much longer until we saw secondhand smoke? 20 years. We're primed to look at smoke, and it's 20 years before we said secondhand smoke is causing it. So number 1, I don't think you looked. Just saying we didn't see anything. Number 2, when I studied cigarettes for causing cancer, I knew who smoked. I see you smoked. You know you smoked. You didn't. The GMO products are unlabeled. I cannot sort it out. And we are certainly seeing a rise in many conditions, but I can't sort it out. I do not agree at all that we are not seeing anything. Eating 100 million meals and we didn't see anything, so it's okay. That's not true. But suppose it was. Suppose God tells you, Dr. Pang, that was true. You ate 100 million meals, and I guarantee you, nobody had a side effect. That's in the last, 12 years, we ate 100 million meals? 12 years ago, when we didn't know, when you didn't have this retrospective data to kind of feel good about safety, and you launched a product which we didn't fully know, where is the informed consent? GMO papaya, the one released on the Big Island, that saved the papaya industry. Fine, you saved the papaya industry. That's a benefit. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe there's been no health effects. I don't agree. But if you use historical data to say, see, we've eaten it, I feel okay. When you first released it and it was unknown for health effects, where is the informed consent? I know I didn't sign it because I have a place on the Big Island. I'm surrounded by GM papaya, which is growing that I never meant to plant. I didn't sign it. So who's responsible here? The industry? The university? No. The regulators, the guys who are supposed to say, go to the ethical committee, ask them, where is the informed consent? And if the ethical committee from Cornell, the guys from Cornell, says, we didn't think it was needed, I want that ethical committee investigated. Now, I've asked for ethical committees to be investigated from the feds. I've been asking 9 years, and all I get is stonewalling. So it's with the regulators. You expect the industry to kind of get away with what they can get away with. I expect that. But the regulators, look, see this guy, this picture here. They use, in this model, it's called deterministic. Deterministic is not observational. It is, I saw the cue ball hit the 8 ball, and one thing led to another. It's mechanistic. It's simple. You try to describe. That's what they're hoping for. That one gene, one protein, we're going to put the gene in, it's going to express the protein, and that's it. Unfortunately, the genome is so complex, you cannot predict deterministics, one gene, one protein. You can't. But this is what the model is based on, and it's wrong to base it on the model. It's simply wrong. You should observe it. Hey, we could end the discussion here. Precautionary principle after data. I showed you there's no data. I showed you what we use, precautionary principle. I showed you what they use. I showed you the WHO position. They will tell you the recent WHO position says risk assessment shows it to be safe. Now, I looked at that 2012, but I also saw the exact same message in 2001. So they took the 2001 data. 2004 says we don't really have data. They took this one and put it in 2012. I don't care. If you're going to have two opinions, just show me the data. Because when I worked for them, it was data-driven. Here is one group that is so smart, they don't need the data, and we listen to them. This group is the National Academy of Science. It's a purple book, free online. I would have brought the book, but I've been through 5 copies. I keep wearing out my copies. Actually, that good. And it's the Institute of Medicine, and it's called Safety of Genetically Engineered Foods, Approaches to Assessing Unintended Health Effects. So I get the book, and I start to read the book. It doesn't say health effects. This is unintended effects, doesn't say health. The title of the book is Health Effects. Believe me, it says health effects. So they stopped saying that. 7 years ago, Honolulu, Hawaii Association, Pediatrics. Monsanto flew in doctors from Duke, Harvard, UC, Davis, doctors to present to the pediatricians, there's really no problem. Well, I thought these guys were going to be smart. I was waiting for some cogent argument. First, they said, anything you see with GMO, you can see with normal food. I said, yeah, I agree. You see bloody nose, you see bloody nose. You see cancer, you see cancer. Stomachache, stomachache. But in GMOs, you see more. There's no question. There's a quantitative argument. They never responded. They had to catch a plane. Okay. I mean, I have nothing against Harvard, Duke, and UC, but for crying out loud, answer the question. Then the woman from Duke, she's kind of smart. She goes, well, I'm not talking about all side effects. I'm talking about known allergens. Well, I'm talking about unknown weird stuff, like the guys on TGN 1412. Those were beyond allergies. The next issue, 7 years later, a very prominent scientist from Penn State, finally this is getting viral, and she says, yep, more unintended effects. Health effects, we agree with you, Dr. Pang, but they're not all bad. They're not, it kind of sounds good. On face value, they're not all bad. Well, are you telling me that a bad effect for the head cancels out a good effect for the kidney? Is that what you tell me? Or within the kidney, there's 4 mechanisms of making urine. Bad for the glomeruli, good for the tubules, so it cancels out. My friends, this is how we do drugs. There's some good effects and bad effects. I ask you, what's your problem? This drug will help your head, but not your kidney. And you say, yes, I want my head to be helped, and my kidneys are pretty good. They can withstand an onslaught. So I tailor it to you. We never say good kind of lumps together. We sort it out. You test it. You don't blindly say, wow, it kind of all adds up. Okay? It doesn't. You guessed wrong. Furthermore, if you're in perfect health, why in the world should you eat GM food that is bad for one thing and good for the other? You can't improve on what you're good at, and all you're going to do is risk something bad. So they kind of stopped, but he said that, and he kind of published it because he has the bully pulpit. Who controls your food and drugs? The FDA. This is 2007. The FDA, a report by FDA scientists of the FDA administrators. One is Michael Taylor, a lawyer from Monsanto. Yeah, well, I mean, there's worse. It used to be like other people, but they move along, and it's called incestuous relationship. They forever exchange. But the scientists were fed up with it, and they put out this report. FDA, Science and Mission at Risk. Oh, try to look for this because they're trying to take this down quickly. It's this blue thing with the test tubes. And it summarizes, you can go through the data, and I'll summarize it for you. The FDA, as currently configured, the administrators, they do not know the science of genomics. They can't afford or not willing to spend to get it, and they do not believe in it. Well, it's hard to believe in something you don't know, so I kind of get it. You don't believe, you don't know it, and you can't afford it. It's especially true in the section of food safety, but it says one nice thing. There is a statement in here that the FDA, as incapable as they are of understanding genomics, there is one group that can do science correctly, empirically. That's the drug and vaccine guys. When I was with WHO in 1992, we tried to coordinate all the agencies from Europe, Australia, Japan, FDA, to get on the same sheet of music, and we thought we kind of did a good job. Well, it's nice to know we kind of did a good job, and it's nice to know that what we thought and the principles we based it on hold true, regardless of what these guys want to do. Here is something new. This is pediatricians concerned about childhood pesticides exposure. The American Academy of Pediatrics, they are asking, here's all the websites, there's an alert that pediatricians should look very, very carefully at the pesticides that the kids are exposed to. Kids are very sensitive, and they are very alarmed because of the combination. ABC News, Richard Besser, that medical guy, used to be head of CDC. He's telling Dan Sawyer, oh, what we're really worried about is the pesticides in the food, and it's called the dirty dozen, the ones with the most, and he says, some of this stuff can't be washed out. Well, what do you expect when you incorporate it in genetically engineered? And so Diane Sawyer says, gee, Richard, what should we do? He says, eat organic. Richard Besser, former head of CDC, goes makes the statement. American Academy of Pediatrics backs this up. Is this about GMOs or is this about pesticides? It's about both. The way they have learned, you have to sterilize the fields to grow the GMOs. And that's why we've got so many pesticides. Look at this. This is a fantastic study that Roundup, that we thought was safe, actually is pretty safe alone. But there's a carrier molecule with it. It's called a surfactant. It's kind of like a detergent. It kind of breaks down the cell wall so the Roundup can penetrate. Did they test the surfactant alone? Surfactant alone is okay. It breaks down the wall, but there's no penetrating toxin. Roundup alone cannot penetrate because there's no surfactant. But lo and behold, Seralini, these guys out of France, actually test the combination. And he goes, hey, look, in combination, it's horrid. And in test tubes, in cell cultures. And he said, this is what's leading to birth defects. This is a very good article because Monsanto responds. And Monsanto said, hey, you know that test tube stuff? That's not real life. Who is seeing real life? Argentina. Go on the internet. Argentina blocked Monsanto's entrance because of birth defects. What does Monsanto say now about real life? They were here. They came to debate me 5 years ago in front of the Maui Medical Society. Dr. Goldstein, the lead medical guy from Monsanto. I said, have you tested these things for safety? He said, nope. Thank God you agree. And we can never do it. I said, you can never test GMO foods for safety? He said, nope. Because when we go out and feed it to all of you guys, there's so many confounding variables, like, oh, you got stomachache. Maybe that was from the aspirin you took. When Latin America said we had birth defects from the Monsanto, the GMOs, he said, hey, maybe it's those pesticides. He kind of forgot that you guys do pesticides but he said there's so many confounding variables that to test it, I can almost quote, you have to take somebody, lock them away for 30 years and feed them nothing but GMO foods in a controlled environment. So check this out. When they do the controlled environment, that's not real life. When we asked to do the real life study by labeling it, oh, no, that's not controlled. So neither is good enough for them, so they claim it's neither. In reality, it's both. When you test for toxicity, you do the controlled study first, kind of get your feet on the ground, then you move to real life. That's how we do it, post-marketing. Now, the Maui Medical Society is a little bit alarmed because the next guy to talk, we have a drug, Lipitor, for cholesterol, and he says, well, I'm glad we tested that in real life because grapefruit juice interferes with Lipitor. So we would never know that unless we tested it in real life. I mean, it's kind of strange for him to say that. But he said it. Since he said it, I can forever quote him. There's a very good group, American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Look for the logo. 300 Americans and Canadians, physicians, PhDs. These guys have a very strong position, came out, and they helped us when we were blocking GM Kalo. Their position is all physicians should tell all their patients, we do not know the risk of GM foods. I'm not saying they're harmful. I don't know what the risks are. Second, When you see something unusual, quantitative or qualitative in your population, you are to consider genetically modified foods. Me, I would consider pesticides too, now that we know that pesticides. They claim they want a moratorium on these products till an independent group proves they're safe. And the ones already out there that we can't seem to call back, label. Notice they don't say the word ban. We don't like the word ban because it sounds kind of emotional. We like moratorium until you, or whatever. Trust me, try to stick with moratorium. If you told me we had a kind of risky GM food, but I think we're going to cure cancer, whoa, the benefits might outweigh the risk and we move forward. A ban sounds too subjective. We go with moratorium until, when we win in court, it's based on the EIS, environmental impact statements. You've not done an EIS, environmental or health, and this is a life form. So the judge says, hey, I agree with you. No, until you can do this. This is a 2-page thing. It's very easy to read. The second page is full of animal studies. It's real easy to remember all the toxicity of animal studies. There's only one organ system which hasn't been shown to be affected yet. I think that's the heart. All the rest, aging, birth defects, liver, spleen, cancer, it's been shown. Contamination of a life form. If you do not think we have contamination, it's all over the internet, and you look at, here's a cool study, Bear LL601, long grain rice, which was never approved for consumption. Well, they planted it from whatever, 93 to 99 or something. Then they pulled it off the market, and 5 or 6 years later, they were going to plant normal rice again. It was contaminated. And so they looked, how did this thing get contaminated? I thought we pulled it off the fields. They spent $1 billion looking, and they could not find it. Was it in the lab? Was it in the field? Was it in the market? I don't know. But it was contaminated, and Europe wouldn't buy the rice. So they said, in the end, they pleaded act of God. But I wrote them a nasty note. Act of God is like Hurricane Katrina. You don't even know what it is, and you cannot declare act of God, number one. And they said, okay, let's just move forward. Next year, we're going to plant. We got seed. They looked in their seed, it was contaminated. And by the way, when they looked at the contamination of Bear LL601, they found Bear LL602, a previously controlled thing, which got there too. I mean, they didn't even know that was there. And do you want to go investigate and declare act of God for Bear LL602? It's kind of, being kind of facetious, but that's how it goes. Here's all the things we've won. We've won mostly in the court. We've won in the counties to block Kalo. And Kauai is trying to do a disclosure. They wanted GMO moratorium, but they bargained away, and they have disclosure of pesticides, buffer zones around the schools and towns, and a health study. I was working with Bruce and Joe and Satya, and we are going to try for the moratorium. But it won't be through council people. It'll be a referendum. That is really the way you should go. If it's so worrisome that you're going to put a buffer zone around school, ask for a health study, ask for disclosure of the pesticides with all their combinations, then you should moratorium it until you finish those things. I mean, really, that's kind of common sense, right? Now, one more thing. Kauai sued because of the pesticides associated with GMOs. It's like, when there was disclosure, there was tons of chemicals. I had no idea what some of this stuff was. But the EPA was there. The EPA controls pesticides. And our position always has been any combination of chemicals, drugs, or pesticides is considered a new drug or combination till proven otherwise. Now, I just asked them this, EPA, do you agree? Stonewall, just no answer. Some of the citizens says, hey, he's talking to you. And he says, each of the compounds has been tested separately. Yeah, that wasn't the question. A combination has been used that has to be proven together, just like the Roundup and the surfactant. National Institute of Occupational Safety Health, another safety health federal group, they agree, 100% compounds of drugs, new product till proven otherwise. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine, they would tell you, Dr. Pang, while you're compounding the drugs, don't forget the GMOs. Maybe there's a GMO and a drug. That could surely be, because the GMO produces the products which are proteinaceous, and some of the drugs you use are plastic-like, and you're looking for hormones now. The hormone mimickers of the plastic. Hey, all bets are off. We do things empirically. We don't try to second guess what we think it's going to be, and that's called deterministic or risk assessment. Well, why aren't we moving ahead? Well, conflict of interest. There was a bad conflict of interest with drugs and vaccines. The pharmaceutical guys were really presenting half the data. We had to recall many things. All the regulators have conflict of interest. all the testifiers have conflict of interest. Every time we call a meeting together, we bring in the stakeholders. When we regulated drugs and vaccines for the World Health Organization, that was a stupid thing to say. Hey, I got all the stakeholders. That's the drug companies. Why would you have a drug company voting on the value of his drug? So we exclude the financial stakeholders. But not in America, not in our government. We like stakeholders. The only valid stakeholder is a consumer. The NIH tried to weed out all the conflict of interest. And they said it's so infiltrated into our regulatory agencies, we're going to define it for you first before we tell you how to remove it. It must cover financial interests, gifts, gratuities, favors, nepotism, and other such areas such as political participation and bribery. What is political participation doing between nepotism and bribery? These aren't my words, these are the NIH. It's a perfect marriage, industry and regulation. Well, you just do what the regulators. He told me I don't have to worry about it, so I didn't. The issue is with the regulators. And the regulators, the FDA, the EPA, asleep at the wheel. I can tell you the regulators in the foreign countries, they're not asleep at the wheel. They just don't have the financial conflict of interest. The other issue is when we go for legislation, I like litigation, but we'll do legislation. And we have always said, win or lose, we're getting out a lot of education. And sometimes we lose, but gee, look at all the people now. In the end, they might pour so much money and sometimes they will confuse the issue. If you vote this way, it's really no, there's a double-edged sword, blah, blah, blah. But that's why we want to start this initiative now. Do not think that because Maui is small, they just kind of, those guys on Maui are nuts. They are watching every piece of legislation. I suspect that, what did they say on Kauai? When Kauai was moving the bill through the council, they said they do not like to be defeated because it sets the example for other governments, state, county, feds, foreign feds, to take action, because it works. So everyone's watching, everyone watch Kauai. Yours will be slightly different, a referendum. It'll be interesting. Win or lose, we'll educate ourselves. But hey, it's worth it.
It is worth it. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.